Welcome back to another episode of Consciously Clueless. I'm your host, Carly, and I'll be your guide on this journey from consciousness to cluelessness and back around again. I'm so excited to introduce Ashlee Piper, who is a political strategist turned sustainability expert, journalist, and TV personality whose work has been featured in GLAMOUR, Refinery29, Women's Health, Reader's Digest, Washington Post, CNN, NBC, CBS, ABC, and Fox News, to name a few. She also wrote the book Give a Shit, Do Good, Live Better, Save the Planet. I am so excited for you to hear this. We talk about all that stuff and more, and it's such a great conversation. Here we go. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm really excited. I have followed you for a while and was really excited that you were willing to chat and come on the podcast.
I am. Thank you very much for having me. This is really going to be fun.
Yeah. So the first question I like to ask, the podcast is called Consciously Clueless. That gets at this idea that I've been exploring about, becoming more conscious and with it, and feeling that some days, and then other days just being like, oh, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm totally clueless, and everything in between. So I like asking guests, where do you feel like you are right now on that spectrum from conscious to clueless in this moment?
Well, if we're talking about, being conscious as far as like your contributions to the world and kind of your interactions there, I feel like I'm doing pretty well. I feel in a good place. I think where, if we're talking about kind of just consciousness generally, like who am I, what am I doing that's satisfying or meaningful to me? I think I'm always in a place of evolving that. I mean, I'm always in a place of, I think we all are in a place of constantly evolving our behaviors in a way that actually makes, us feel like we're making good contributions to the world and to other people's lives and to our own lives. But I definitely think I'm in kind of a place of maybe not reinvention, but like ascent. Like I'm trying to figure out what are the best ways to harness like my passions and what do I do with those? Like, where do I go from there? So that's really where I'm at. And sorry if you're hearing beeping. I'm trying to turn off this thing on my computer that is a residual work program. So
I'm actually not hearing it. So
oh, good. It's just in my head. That's where I am. Level of consciousness. I've got a bunch of beeps going on, and no one else can hear them.
Oh my gosh. I love that you said that, and that, so in kind of this like what's next phase, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Are you someone who's like, I'm in the what's next phase and I'm super excited, or are you like, I'm scared shitless?
I think I'm neither. I'm kind of like the person who's like, I'm in the what's next phase, and why the hell don't I know what that is yet? Like, I mean, I'm very much like I'm a pretty type A person working on like, both leaning into that and also being compassionate with myself about it, but also finding other strategies around it. But I definitely am hard on myself when it comes to ambition, productivity, accomplishments. And so if I reach a goal, I usually am the type of person who like savors it for like a day. And then I'm like, okay, what next? And sometimes not knowing the arc of what's next, like what that looks like, I think for all of us can be kind of troubling, especially right now. The world is so unsure. We don't know when it will be a good idea to travel again, see our loved ones, kind of resume life as normal, if that's even a possibility. So then if you're thinking about kind of taking a different step or going in a different direction with like your career or your personal passions, it can just feel like, but why don't I know what that is? And that adds like an extra sense of, just kind of existential confusion. I can't believe I just used the term existential confusion, but
I was like, yes,
we're getting existentially confused.
Yes.
So I think I'm both and also not at all excited and scared, because it's not that I might be a little bit afraid of not knowing what it is, and I might be a little excited of not knowing what it is, but those aren't my two primary emotions. It's usually impatience with myself, of not knowing that. So that's kind of like where I tend to go, but I really would like to lean more into the whole, I don't know what this looks like, but gosh, I'm curious, and I'm positively anticipating what that looks like, because I know things will work out great. Like, I would love to naturally be that kind of person. I would also love to meet people who are naturally those kind of people, because I think it's really something you have to like train your brain to be like, whoa, okay, let's look at the silver lining here. Let's look at the positive.
I'm relating to you. Like, I always forget. I'm like, this is a podcast. People can't see you when I'm like shaking my head furiously agreeing with you. But I totally relate to that idea of just really learning how to not put all my value as a human in my output and productivity. And
yes,
it's a lot of rewiring.
It is a lot, because I mean, I don't know how old you are, and you don't have to talk about how old you are or whatever, if you don't want to. Some people are comfortable with it. Some people aren't.
Oh, I just got my birth chart read on the last episode. So
Love
there's all of that's out there. I'll be 29 this month.
Oh my gosh. Beautiful year, beautiful age, good time. So I am 39, and I feel a lot like that, like growing up, the kind of just productivity, which I actually get a lot of energy from, and I like it, like was just ingrained in me. Hard work, chasing your dreams. And so for those of us who feel like that or have been conditioned like that, it's like, what is downtime? And like, we can't even rest in the relaxing kind of pockets that we give ourselves, because even if we're just sitting there and doing nothing, our mind is like, well, what's next? And what am I should be doing something else. So I feel you. Big time. A lot of deprogramming that, you have to kind of do.
Yes, totally. So I'm really curious to hear about how you went from politics to vegan eco lifestyle writer. Like, where did that transition come from? Walk us through it.
Yeah. Oh, it doesn't seem like a totally intuitive path. I'm just kidding. It definitely was kind of, I wouldn't say a clunkier journey, but not a monolithic one. So I, as you mentioned, was a political strategist for a decade. And during that time, I had always been raised like in a way where we had companion animals that we adopted from shelters. In kind of my 20s, I was very active in like fur protests and kind of animal rightsy type of like action, not direct action necessarily, but more like activism, I would say. And so I always cared about those things. But, as a political strategist, I was working more on kind of the human impact side of things, like public health and like child welfare. These were kind of I was an advisor in Massachusetts to 2 governors, and those were kind of my 2 areas of focus. And so I was really interested in like social impact and so like social equity and, all those things. And then when I moved to Chicago and started working at a political strategy firm there, I had gotten really personally into becoming vegetarian. It had just been something that like forever I would like put it on my New Year's resolutions, like become vegetarian. And then I would like get a week into the new year and like fuck it up by going to Chipotle or something, and at the time when Chipotle had no real vegetarian options. And so I would always feel bad about it, but it was definitely something I wanted to do. And at the time I adopted my dog, who is almost about to be 14. And I just started to see such like, so many other animals in her. And I was like, damn, okay. And I think actually having her in my life really helped to make the shift to vegetarianism and then later veganism really stick for me. And that was totally a personal pursuit. I mean, I was kind of insufferable as I was exploring it, because I always say like, there's nothing, and I say this affectionately, being a longtime vegan, like there's nothing more insufferable than like a baby vegan, like a fresh vegan, because, they're wonderfully well-intentioned, but I was like the kind of person who would be like, who wants to come over to my house and watch Earthlings? And it's like, no, like literally no one wants to do that. That's like such a fucking bummer. And so my family and my friends and my partner at the time, I mean, must have just been like, Ash is so obnoxious. But so because, right?
Same.
It's just a universal truth. And then, the longer you're in it, the more relaxed you become, and kind of, you're like, hey man, I've been at this a while. It's fine. Don't be so hard on yourself. It's okay.
Oh my God. Yes.
But yeah, and then from there I got interested in like environmental stewardship, and so I just kind of became self-taught. I went on my own journey of sustainable living, essentially, and I became so passionate about it and it just transformed my life in really wonderful ways that I just straight up decided, without having another job lined up, I'm going to leave this 10-year career, like all this financial security, all of this kind of clout that I had built, being a pretty well-known political strategist. I'm just going to leave it. And I'm going to see if I can, use my gifts in another way around like sustainability or around veganism. And it left, and it took me like a year to figure out like, what am I going to do? Because I just couldn't, I don't know. I couldn't find like the right organization. I didn't know if I wanted to work for an organization. I wanted to work for myself. I just wasn't sure what any of that looked like because I'd followed such a traditional path before that. So I spent a year literally cleaning like the bathrooms of yoga studios for free classes and like really penny pinching and experiencing like an incredibly different life than what I had before. But I was lucky because I was doing it by choice. And I was giving myself the time to figure out what I wanted to do next. And it was during that time that I started pitching certain, like maybe smaller publications to write for them. I had never had any journalistic experience, but I was like, why not? And then as that kind of portfolio grew, I started pitching more mainstream magazines and publications. And as that grew, I started to think, well, maybe I could bring this on TV. Like maybe people would be interested in and do certain small sustainable shifts or eat more plant-based if they knew how easy it was and they had someone who was kind of telling them like, hey, this is a cool fit new product, or this is a cool step you could take that's really impactful but low sacrifice, and
in an approachable way that doesn't seem so intimidating,
that didn't make people feel like shit, and didn't make people feel judged, and didn't make it feel like it was so impossible, like you had to be perfect. And so I started pitching, finding like producers' contact information on like Twitter and stuff and like pitching them. I had like no experience in doing any of this. It was actually kind of a hard but beautiful time because I had like nothing to lose. I was already like poor as shit. I wasn't doing this to like make money. I felt like I had value to add, but I had never done any of this before. So if you don't have, and there weren't a lot of people, if any, really doing sustainability stuff on TV. Or writing about it. And like I had a column in Refinery 29 that was about like cruelty-free beauty and vegan fashion and stuff like that. They had never done anything like that. And that was probably like 6 years ago. And so there wasn't really a blueprint. And because there wasn't a blueprint for me, I just wasn't afraid of failing because I already kind of felt like I was already grappling with feelings of like, I'm sort of a fucking loser because I left this like great career on a whim. Yeah. And it was a nice feeling there a little bit because I just was so willing to try almost anything and learned really to get strong around rejection too, because producers and editors can be like, you don't have the look we want, or this is whatever it is. And it was just kind of nice because I was like, I would get maybe 10 rejections in a day or something, but I would be like, it's okay, we'll try again tomorrow. And I just was really like doggedly kind of persistent, and it ended up working out okay. And so over time, so since then I've done like 250 TV segments, I think, all around sustainability. And I write a lot for other publications. And then the book kind of came about as a natural extension of that. So I had been, doing this for probably about like 5 years solidly, 4 or 5 years solidly, and was able to get a literary agent, and we put a proposal together right after Trump actually was elected, and farmed it out. And it happened to be kind of the right time for a book like that. And that's how it happened. So
your book, Give a Shit, Do Good, Live Better, Save the Planet.
Yeah. That's the book.
I actually haven't read it yet. It's been on my list for so long. And then this weekend when I was like, oh yeah, we're talking this week and I haven't read her damn book. How unprofessional of me. But I'm very excited. I also think it's really funny that right after Trump got elected, you got to publish a book or start a book that says Give a Shit.
Yeah.
Just some good irony for some reason that feels right. So can you tell us a little bit about the book?
Yeah. So when I was kind of on my own journey, I just didn't, there have always been good books around niche topics in sustainable living. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm the only person who's done this, because that's not true. But I felt like there were books about like composting or veganism, cookbooks, like a lot of those areas were kind of well addressed, but there wasn't like a primer that brought it all together under one roof and really kind of like, because my book brings together like minimalism, in a measured way as an approach to sustainability. It talks about zero waste, sustainable fashion, cruelty-free and vegan beauty, fashion, food, like secondhand. They're just like all the elements that kind of make up a sustainable universe, including like being charitable, being kind, like how to get involved in public policy and activism around sustainable issues, like all of those things into one book. I hadn't found something like that. It didn't seem to exist to me. And also I did, like I come from a pretty conservative family. So they're actually, it's been a gift in a way, because even though they don't necessarily like believe in all the climate change stuff, I'm able to see that they're very accepting and supportive of me. And I'm able to see like what their perceptions are of living sustainably, like what are their hangups, like what kind of stigmas they have around it. And so they felt like it's inconvenient, it's expensive, it's crunchy and unfashionable and uncool. It doesn't work, like it doesn't make an impact. And that was great information for me, because I wanted to actively like debunk all of those. I wanted it to be like, this is something that'll make your life better. You don't have to be perfect. You can do these in incremental, like really actionable steps. It does make a difference. Here's why. Here's the deal around climate change, because climate change is such an enormous issue, and, demystifying it a little bit, uncomplicating it, I think is really important for people to actually feel like any actions they're going to take are going to matter. So I wanted all of that in one book, but I wanted it to feel not depressing to read, because there are wonderful sustainability books out there that will give you a shit ton of scientific data that is great, but they leave you feeling really hopeless. And I wanted people to leave reading the book feeling really powerful, feeling like they have a responsibility, but it's a joyful one. And so that's really how the book came about. And it's been an awesome journey. It came out about 2.5 years ago, but I think it's still evergreen enough that like every day I get new people posting about it or writing me about it. And it's just been such an exciting experience to produce a book on something I'm really passionate about.
So it's so interesting, because I talk to so many people who are vegan, and it's funny how similar the path is, that like the dominoes fall. So it's like whatever your path into that world is, then more often than not, leads to all these other things. So it sounds like for you, veganism was the thing that led to sustainability. Is that correct?
Yeah. Veganism was definitely my gateway drug into sustainability. But I think, what I love about actually these things, and I think sometimes people don't talk about it, and it's, I think it's important to frame or reframe these kinds of initiatives or changes you make in your life as real joy bringers, like things that are exciting. They're full of adventure, because so often like society tries to tell us like, that's so challenging being vegan, or it's impossible being sustainable. And really it's like, shit, this is exciting. And what I love about it is that both with like any kind of sustainable habit, whether you're looking to be more plant-based, or you want to go full vegan, God bless you, like I didn't do it overnight. A lot of people don't, but if there are people who do, and I think that's amazing, or you just want to be like lower waste, or, whatever your kind of issues are that you want to, taking the steps and finding out that they're a lot easier than you feared or thought in the first place, and that they're actually like impactful, making a difference, and that they actually make you feel good because it's kind of low sacrifice and you're doing something nice for the collective. It's really like contagious. You just want to do like more and more. And so I find that a lot. People will write me and be like, okay, first I started with like reusable cloths instead of paper towels, but then I decided I could compost at home and I'm loving it. Like, and then it's just like it just builds. And then people in your life become curious about these things.
Totally.
And it's contagious for them as well. So I think it's a very like positive kind of contagious movement if we make it that, and if we communicate it in that way. And that's something I really love about it. There's no gatekeeper for sustainability, and there shouldn't be, and there's no limit to the amount of really good things we can do as individuals that don't involve policymakers, don't involve government, don't involve industry regulations. There's no limit to the good stuff we can do in our own personal habits and in our lives around sustainability. And that's fun and exciting.
I like that you talk about both, though, that like individual action and the public policy action, because I think that when I first started diving into these things, I definitely went into like an obsessive mode of like every action I did. If I screwed up, I was going to hell. If I accidentally forgot to like not ask for a straw, I felt guilty for days. Like I was just like, well, I'm a garbage person. like that, you know, I just was so obsessed with my individual action. And then I started learning about policy and bigger things. And I was like, God, does that even matter? And then you just kind of have to land on like, okay, both. Like both.
Yes. And you hear people a lot of times talk about kind of some of that data that came out in The Guardian, where it's like 70% of harmful global emissions are produced by these, 20 companies. And most, if not all of those companies are fossil fuel companies. There are a few agricultural companies in there. But we also need to recognize, like, we create the demand and we consume those products or those resources that those companies are providing. Like, they wouldn't be making money if there wasn't a demand from individuals and then the collective. So I look at it kind of like the same way we would address any kind of systemic large scale problem. Like, for instance, it's a really good thing that people are talking about systemic racism these days, much more. It's long overdue. And just because a lot of the systemic issues around like, racism are things that really need to be solved by huge governmental action, big policy action, around everything from education and economic equity to policing to reparations. There's so many things. That doesn't absolve me from individually doing actively anti-racist work. Like, that doesn't absolve me from reading and educating myself so I don't put the burden on my BIPOC like friends. That doesn't absolve me from learning more about history and how it's been racist and how I've benefited by being like a white woman, in the world. So I think that you need both. That's basic. Yeah, you absolutely need both. But I get asked that question a lot. Like, well, it's these 20 companies. So like, I'm just a person. And I'm like, we can have both. We can push for the bigger action, but you can also be doing your part. That's the most powerful thing of all time, is to be like, I'm governing how I live my life, and I'm choosing to make these decisions that I know are going to be better for the planet, better for people, better for animals. Like, I can't think of anything nicer than that, frankly.
That's such a good parallel too that you drew with, like systemic racism, systemic anything. It doesn't absolve our individuals. Like, we don't get to be a shitty person because these companies aren't fixing things yet. Right. And that is such a good example to put it in that frame, because I think it's we think about sustainability a little different. We don't think about it in the systemic ways as we do other issues, but that's really helpful. It like gives a visual almost.
Well, thanks. And that's a good point that you make. Like, we don't think about sustainability as a solution to a systemic problem, but global warming or climate change, more aptly, is an extremely systemic problem, perhaps like the very definition of a systemic problem.
Yeah, totally. Do you have any success stories where you had like people in your life where you're like, I never thought this person would think about veganism or sustainability, and they came to me 5 years later and they go to every Veg Fest every year?
I have some, and they're usually like real surprises. So it's a lot of people. For instance, I'm from Texas originally, and a lot of people I happen to be really tangentially connected to in life, like through Facebook or something.
Right.
And I went to high school with them, was kind of close with them. We're not like, connected via phone or text or anything like that. But, when the book came out or when I started doing TV segments, I would get messages from like just totally random people who I knew I was connected to on Facebook, but they'd be like, oh, we're eating more meatless meals, or I'm buying only cruelty-free makeup, or our whole household's gone vegan, like all these things. And I'd be like, yo, I haven't talked to you in like 15 years, but that's fucking cool. And I've received even more of that since the book came out. Like, and it's really, look, I recognize like writing a book was a huge investment of time, and I work a full-time job in addition to doing the sustainability stuff. So like, and that job doesn't have anything to do with sustainability. But what I really appreciate is reading a book is like it's a huge investment of other people's time to read the book I wrote. So when somebody just lets me know that they took the time to read it, I feel incredibly honored. And then when I find out that it inspired them or it made them feel less alone or made them feel excited, like that just is, it's mind-blowingly awesome to hear. Because both it's the investment of time that they put into that, but also they got something out of it, just like it's rad. So it's been a lot of like people from my kind of early life in Texas who have really surprised me. And even when I go on like TV segments, you know, I might meet a news anchor for like 20 minutes. As we prep for the segment, we do the segment, and then we say our goodbyes. And a lot of times what I would do is if I got any kind of props from like a company or something like that, or had props to the book, even though I can't put the book on TV for obvious reasons, it has shit right on the cover. but I would usually try to distribute the props or the products to the people who were working at the news station if they were interested. It's just a way to also give those brands an extra boost of like, hey, this news anchor on, you know, Good Morning America now has a stasher bag or whatever it is.
Love my stasher bags.
I mean, my God. And it would be so fun to see, like, I'd get an email 3 months later from the news anchor or something, and it would be like, oh my God, I now have a bidet. I have a toilet paper. I have a toilet paper delivery service, and we're not using paper towels anymore. Like, I can't stop. Like, this is so great. And so those are always fun too, because I'm like, yes, you know? So it's really neat. And I think it's like everyday activism does that too. Like, how many of us have dated a person or, you know, become friends with people, or we work with people and we're not being pushy. We're just kind of like doing our thing. And then suddenly someone will send you a text and be like, I'm pretty sure I'm eating a vegan meal right now, you know, like, and you'll be like, damn, that's cool, man. So I think everybody, whether you don't have to write a book or go on TV to have that same kind of impact on people individually, but it's always exciting.
Yeah, I think that's another good point I've been thinking about a lot lately too, is we just so underestimate our ability to make change. Like I always say, like, if you have a social media platform, you don't have to be on social media if you don't want to. But if you do, and you have 5 followers, you could like influence 1 to 5 people to do something different. And similarly to like what you were saying, I am a brand ambassador for Thanks underwear.
Oh, love it. Yeah, I love my Thanks.
Oh my gosh, they're my favorite. And if you ever need a code, hit me up.
Oh my God, I might. Hey.
and somebody from high school that, you know, I hadn't talked to in a long time messaged me and was like asking me questions about period underwear and periods and all this stuff. And I was like, what? Like, it was the most bizarre thing. But it was a reminder, like, people are listening and watching. If you post something, like, you can have more influence than we give ourselves credit for. Yeah. You know, like, this one person might have had a better period next month because they bought some of these things and I hadn't talked to them in 12 years, but still, like, that's crazy.
Yes. And I actually think, to take that even a step further, like the way that influencing, like, I don't consider myself an influencer. I actually don't like the term personally, but the way that influencing has gone, where it's such a bought and paid for kind of arrangement. And again, totally understand, influencing is a job and you need to be able to sustain yourself and make money. Thankfully, I'm not in that position. So like, I don't really like do brand sponsorship, partnership things, but I know a lot of people do. But the market has got, so people's feeds have gotten saturated with, oh, it's the Nordstrom sample sale. Oh my God. All this shit, right? And so you'll, even in the sustainability realm, because now just in like the past 4 years, you see people who are like sustainability influencers, which is cool. I'm glad about it, because like we need people on kind of every level doing the TikToks and doing the policy stuff. We need people doing all this stuff. But it sometimes like you'll just see the same people or like multiple people promoting the same shampoo bar in your thread, right? And like for the whole week. And I get it. Like, you know, brands have coordinated marketing efforts whereby they want influencers and stuff. That said, I think like the person who has the 5 followers, like you were talking about, what they have with those 5 followers that a lot of influencers, like bigger scale, like I've got 1 million followers type influencers don't have, is they have the ear and the trust of those 5 people.
Yes.
And so like you
Totally.
already have a relationship with that person. You know, they're not trying to like manipulate you to buy something because it fiscally benefits you.
Yes.
So I would actually argue that like in some ways, that's a much more organic and powerful following than someone who has like so many more followers who is doing this as a job.
Right.
And so that's not to like shit on influencers, but rather
Right.
say, you know, the supposed average social media Joes who are like, oh, I don't have any followers. Like nobody cares what I have to say. You would really be surprised. You pack much more of a wallet than you think.
I love that. And it's such a good reminder to use that platform if you have something to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like no matter what. And I think there's also, I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts on this. When you said that, the direction I thought you were going actually was talking about greenwashing, because now there's this whole like, oh, wait a second, it's capitalism, right? Like we could make money off of people wanting to be more sustainable. Let us try and sell them things that aren't actually that sustainable.
Yep.
And so it's like now there's this tricky market where I feel like sometimes the average person who's trying to do better is confused.
Yeah. I mean, we can totally talk about greenwashing. I think that's a natural segue from like talking about influencers, because I think what's nice on the nice end is that people who are into sustainability and people who are also like into cruelty-free or vegan products are very much considered a real category with purchasing power. We're like actual customers that people give a shit about. So that's important, because that means more things for us to choose from, which is great. But it also makes the market really ripe for misrepresentation. And, you know, I think the same as how like cruelty-free, you'll like look at a product and you'll be like, I ain't never seen this seal before. And they can just like fuck around and put whatever they want to on a product. I think that's what we're seeing with like green and natural and eco-friendly. These are totally unregulated terms. There are a few bodies that are pretty reputable that might like talk about or certify certain kinds of materials or manufacturing processes, but there is no seal that is like universally agreed upon and recognized as being like, this is a sustainable product. That doesn't exist. And so I find it so funny, because what you'll see are these influencers who start off and they're like, they've really got it. Like they get sustainability. They understand that true sustainability is first using what you've got.
Using what you have.
I keep pointing to my finger, using what you freaking have. There's like, I mean, and then if you need something, acquiring it secondhand, acquiring it through the circular kind of borrowing economy or sharing economy, or, you know, purchasing something new if you have to from an eco-friendly, you know, human rights oriented kind of business, right? These are like the first stops we should go on. But what's happened instead is that people are like, have lost sight of that, and influencing is their job now. And so they're like, oh, H&M's Conscious collection. And it's like, that's not. And I'm not, again, I have friends who promoted, like, who have had partnerships with the Conscious collection and stuff like that. And they're beautiful. And I think it's great. And these are people who really get sustainability. I want to say, like, businesses taking steps to like have a conscious collection or recognizing like being more sustainable or having a buyback program, even if their business is like an H&M or something like that, still a really good step in the right direction. So not saying that those aren't the thing, but literally there are some influencers where it's like every damn day it's a sponsored post and it's about buying something new. And I recognize there's no money in telling people to go to the thrift store and buy something secondhand. And there's certainly no money in telling people to use the fork they have at home or the old Tupperware or the old water bottle instead of going and buying something new.
Yep.
So I get that. I know it's like a real catch-22. And this is kind of uncharted territory, because sustainable products are just now starting to have their moment in the spotlight. But yeah, I think it's a little tough, because there's no, like, consumers and just like people on social media, you can't just trust in any case, what an influencer says. That like everybody should be kind of critically thinking on their own about like what works for their lifestyle and what they're willing, like what's aligned with their values.
Right.
Because there's nobody out there who like has all the answers on it. There's, you know, very few influencers who aren't taking money to do sponsored kinds of posts. So,
Yeah.
you know, it makes it a little tough for regular people to know where the frick to go to be more sustainable.
Totally. I have the privilege of being able to like sit down and do research when I decide I need something, right? So it's like, okay, I'm going to invest a month because my research just, I will research things to death.
Are you a Virgo or something? I was going to say,
I'm a Pisces.
Ooh, very you're a water sign like I am, girl. I'm a Cancer.
Okay. Yeah. And I learned way more after getting my birth chart read this week. I was like, this explains everything. But I had this moment where like my mom and I had gone to the store together, and she has, slowly been like adopting more sustainable practices and wants to learn more. So we were at Target, and she was like, oh, I need laundry soap. And so we're in that section looking at the like better for you natural section of the laundry soap aisle at Target. Yep. And there's still, 14 options.
Yep.
And my mom was like, kind of just looked at me and was like, well, how do I know? And I was like, I'm not sure. Yeah. Like, we could stand here and Google all of these. You could, or we could trust this one because we've heard of this one. Or I just had this moment where I was like, how is the average person who doesn't necessarily want to invest 10 hours of research into laundry soap, but who wants to make a difference? Like, what the hell do they do? Yeah. That's hard.
That is hard. And I think a lot of it has to, and I don't necessarily like want to plug my book and be like, well, my book can help, but it could, because I approach it from the standpoint of like, what's your kind of hierarchy of values in sustainability? For some people, it's being vegan or shopping for things that are cruelty free. For some people, it's zero waste. Right. It's like, some people it's totally plastic free. Some people it's low tox. Like, I don't want something that's full of fucking chemicals, even though everything's a chemical, but that kind of thing. So when you understand like the issues around each of those kind of niche like topics, you can then build your own value system. So I know people, for instance, who are very, very into sustainable fashion, but sustainable fashion for them includes like wool, leather, items like that maybe someone who like me, who identifies as an ethical vegan, I might have some of those items, but I only purchase them secondhand. So everybody kind of has their own like rubric of where they like their entry level into sustainability. Like, what's your pet issue? Because it's really difficult, especially right now, to find any kind of products that would fulfill every single thing that you would ultimately want something to be. So, if you're looking at that aisle of laundry detergents, if you're a person who's into plastic free, you might be going for the powdered version that's in paper. If you're someone who's into cruelty free, you would be looking at the companies that aren't owned by parent companies like Clorox or P&G. You would be looking for something that's explicitly not tested on animals, like a Mrs. Meyer's Clean Day or something like that. But that is in plastic,
Yes.
So I think it's like important to kind of say like, where's my first like entry into sustainability? Like, what's the issue that's most important to me? Because like, for instance, I could buy something I used to go to Payless when I first was vegan and buy shoes there. Right. Yeah. So they have animal friendly products. I think they've gone under since, but they have animal friendly products, but it's all fast fashion and it's all like, totally produced elsewhere, and it's terrible human rights likewise. So everybody kind of has to have their better understand these issues and their impacts in them. And then they can kind of formulate what's most important to them. And that will help to be a little bit of a North Star when it comes to, whoa, I've got 15 options. What should I buy?
That's such a good point. And I think what it also illustrates, which I need a reminder all the time, is that you can't be perfect.
No, right? God, that like,
it's impossible. Exactly. Like I don't remember which, I I'm going to kick myself because I'll remember after we get off this call. But one of my guests, one of the favorite quotes that have came up was just like, you can't be perfect in an imperfect world. And it's such a simple phrase, but until I heard that out loud, I was like, oh my gosh, why am I trying to be perfect in a world that's not going to allow me to make a perfect choice? Like, that's really setting myself up for frustration.
Seriously. And especially now, you know, we're in a pandemic. Okay. So like, and in case y'all been under a rock, just thawed out of a block of ice, I got news for you. For the past year, we've been in a pandemic. It's been crazy.
Shit.
And a lot of people feel badly because it's
yes.
really more difficult than ever to avoid disposables or single-use items during said pandemic. It is really difficult to shop in bulk, depending upon where you live. If that was something I used to do.
Yep.
And
same.
It's not something that's possible. Where are you at, Carly?
I'm in Grand Marais, Minnesota. So it's like way the hell up north. If you got to Canada, you're just a little bit too far.
Okay, nice. So you cold right now. You're feeling
I'm cold.
You're cold. So, and Minnesota's great because you guys have like, at least I went to Voyageurs National Park a few years ago and we drove through Minnesota, and I just was like, wow, at every like stop, there were just these like natural food stores with like tons of bulk stuff. It was really fantastic.
Yeah, we're pretty good on that. And I'm way up north. We're lucky we have a really beautiful co-op. Like, it's a really small town, but we have a great co-op, and especially being vegan in a small town up north, it's really great, but a lot of bulk stuff is gone. I've bought more vegetables and plastic in the last year than I had probably for 4 years, and I had a freaking crisis at the beginning.
Yeah, it's really hard. I mean, like even just simple things like getting a coffee, which now has become kind of the one time I leave my house. Now I'm in Joshua Tree right now because I'm kind of living here for like 4 months, but
oh, beautiful.
Well, it's an escape winter plan, but I live in Chicago most of the time. And after 15 years of a Chicago winter, my boyfriend and I were like, we want to be somewhere else for winter during this pandemic.
Peace
like
out.
We just want to give ourselves a moment. But you know, in Chicago during the pandemic, one thing, like my one kind of exciting outing would be to walk my dog and go get a cup of coffee, you know, and can't get your own thing filled. I haven't gotten like a regular coffee cup in freaking like 7 years or something. It's been a really long time. And that was kind of like oh shit, like I'm making a lot of trash. Like I'm making a lot more trash than I thought I ever would again in my life. And I think everybody just needs to be like a little gentle with themselves and be like, this is what we're living in right now. We're all doing our best. And
not compromising our own health.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, just because I was like, okay, what am I gonna do? Like, not eat salad for a year? Like,
yeah.
I mean,
I see people doing a lot of. I'm sure you're no stranger to this. You know, the vegan community is full of wonderful, super well-intentioned people. It can also be filled with gotcha vegans who are like, well, the Impossible Burger's not vegan, you know, and all this shit. And it's like, okay, man, thanks so much. Like, and the sustainability movement is full of that too. I think now they've kind of called these people like self-appointed gatekeepers or whatever. But like, you know, man, there are so many things like, and it's almost impossible to get aspirin in like a glass bottle nowadays, or people who are on birth control. Like, I'm not gonna tell you to not use a condom because it's plastic, you know. You gotta look out for yourself. Or, you know, my dog's on heart medication. It comes in the biggest fucking plastic bottle I've ever seen. Like, these are just real life things. And that's why I actually don't love the term zero waste, because I'm like, nobody is zero waste. You can strive toward it. It's a cool thing to strive to, but sometimes we see people and we're like, well, I can't fit all my trash in a jar. And no shade to like Lauren Singer, who's a great person as far as I know her. Like, she kind of popularized that a little bit instead of Bea Johnson. They're both amazing influencers in the space. Not everybody can do that. And like, I don't want people to feel precluded from participating because they can't do that.
Yeah, especially in the beginning, if you're just following those people, right? Like we don't have a pharmacy up here right now, so I have to order it from God knows where. And my antidepressants come in a big FedEx plastic and then a smaller thing and then the actual bottle. And I am not going to be here this winter without them.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, Carly, that's so selfish of you to want antidepressants during the Minnesota winter. during a
During a
pandemic.
pandemic.
How self-serving are you? Yeah, absolutely. These are things that are critical for you to show up in the world every day. So they come in plastic until someone starts like a startup that whereby you can get it without. This is the best option. Like, I agree. You should never compromise your health, like well-being, your pet's health in pursuit of some kind of purist standard of sustainability or veganism that just doesn't exist.
Yes, I remember seeing some sort of influencer or whatever on social media talking about how, like, the way she handles headaches now. And it was about, like, now that I am zero waste and more, I'm paraphrasing, but now that I, do less waste and low toxicity in my life and blah, 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 instead of taking ibuprofen because it comes in a plastic bottle, I can take a bath and blah, 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 and like all these things. And I was like, that's great. I also try and take less, drugs if I have to and solve things naturally. I'm a big old hippie. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm not going to tell someone, like, I'm imagining like a single mom of 3. Could you imagine telling her, like, honey, you can't buy ibuprofen anymore. And if you have a headache, please take a bath.
Yeah, sorry.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's definitely, yes. So everybody lives differently. And I do think that's another thing as well. I don't know the person you're speaking about. I'm sure.
I don't even remember her name. I just remember seeing it and being like, well, and I got what she was saying. It was, and I got it, and it's important, but it just, without the like caveat at the end that says this works for me and not for everyone.
Right.
That's the problem. I think that is like, then there's this expectation that if you can't do that, you're a shit person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we all live differently, and not all of us. I think this is another thing that's kind of toxic about influencer culture is that, we don't see most of people's lives, obviously, on social media. And that's by design because it's kind of meant to be. You don't see a lot of accounts that are created that are like, these are the shitty, depressing moments where I've hit rock bottom. Because nobody would follow that. It would be like a tough sell. But not only that, but like a lot of people who are prominent influencers, some of whom I've met and are really, really nice people, cool people, super well-intentioned, they live lives where they are like jet setters, or they live in Bali, where they can go and access like fresh fruit right off the tree, and everything's eco-friendly there because the whole system there is like maybe more conducive to living in that way. Okay. I can't imagine someone like in a food desert in Chicago, or someone who's like living in a really rural area of Kansas telling them, why don't you just buy it in bulk? That's not a possibility. And then there are people who actually like work real jobs and I shouldn't say real jobs, like influencing isn't a real job. It is, but like people who are out there busting their hump at different kinds of jobs. It's not feasible to be like, why aren't you packing your lunch every day? Or why aren't your children eating organic or whatever? It's like, fuck it, man. These people are just trying to get through every day. So influencing has kind of, I think that caveat you talked about is so important. It's that this is what I do. I have found this works well for me. Maybe you find value in it. Maybe you don't. Totally okay. Because again, I'm not the gatekeeper of what sustainability is like for each individual person.
Yes. Oh, I love this. This is so important. Like so important.
We're just out here doing the Lord's work, on this podcast.
Amen. Amen. Preach.
This is iced coffee, by the way. This is not wine. I recognize this look. This is a wine glass, but it is iced coffee.
The last time you picked it up, I saw there was ice, but the first time I was like, is she drinking red wine? Good for her.
Ashlee Piper's really going in. No, it's iced coffee. It's only like 4 here, so no, not yet. Soon.
Oh man. I want to be cognizant of time because you said that you had.
I'm okay for like another 10 minutes. So.
Okay, perfect. Well, is there anything that you didn't get to share? I didn't give you space. I didn't ask about that you're like, I have to share this. This is a burning desire to be on this podcast and share this.
No, because you're like a really wonderful interviewer and podcast host, and I feel like you gave so much space. I feel like I just like rattled on and on. So thank you.
Oh, Well, thank you. No, this was absolutely lovely. If people are totally inspired by you, which I have no doubts they will be, where can they get a hold of you or follow you? Like, what's the best way?
Yeah, so I'm most active on the gram. After all the talk about influencers,
I
I'm
was
like,
same.
Here I am on the gram. So I'm at Ashlee Piper on Instagram, and it's Ashlee with 2 E's and no Y, just like Ashlee Simpson, except I was born before her. Let's see what else. I also have a website that is my name, ashleepiper.com, but I honestly have not done shit with that website for a while. And then if people are really interested, I don't know if people know I wrote a book. And so the book is called Give a Shit, Do Good, Live Better, Save the Planet. It is not only available in hardcover form, which I have to say, I made lots. We did lots of things to make sure that the paperback book was super sustainable. So like, for instance, I didn't do a hardcover release because hardcovers are really shitty for the environment. They take up like 4 times more paper. And the book itself is fully recyclable, fully compostable, made in North America, which is like really rare. Most books are printed and bound in China. So produced in Canada using wind power, and all of the paper is FSC paper, and all of the inks are like water soluble soy-based inks. So like the whole book itself is very sustainable. But there's also an Audible version that I narrate, okay? And then there's an ebook version as well. And the book is at pretty much every library. So if you're not into like buying a book, you can just get it at your local.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you
so much. This was so fun. I hope we connect in the future and connect again.
Me too. Come to Chicago sometime when it's safe to do so.
Well, I haven't been to Chicago since a high school band trip, so it's probably time to come back as like a full-fledged adult.
Well, hopefully summertime, sometime warm. Come through.
Yes.
We'll grab drinks, we'll grab foods, we'll just have a great time.
That sounds amazing. I'm so down.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast. A great way to cap off the day.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Consciously Clueless. That conversation with Ashlee got me thinking about so many things, sustainability related, but also about how we talk about these issues and just to ease up the pressure on ourselves within these systems. If you're enjoying this podcast, hit subscribe wherever you're listening. If you want to help me get this into the ears of more listeners, send it to a friend, text it to a family member, share on social media, and tag me. Whatever you can do really helps me out. To be read on air as a review of the week, head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. And if you haven't yet, head over to patreon.com/consciouslycarly and see what I'm up to over there. Until next time.